Hi, everyone. This is Rose Odette with the Michigan Innovation Podcast. And today's episode is one that I've been really looking forward to because I get to spend some time with Jamie Gallagher. How are you doing today,
Doing
Jamie?
great, Rose. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for driving all the way down here from Traverse City.
Beautiful drive.
Wow,
On a day like today, fantastic.
fantastic. Yeah, it finally spring is here. I think it's here to stay. We're mid-May. It should be. It's been a little teasing us
Oh
this year,
yeah.
hasn't it?
Oh, for sure.
It's been nice and then cold, but I think we're getting into summer. Well, one of the things that I heard a lot about Jamie before I met him today, because he has been working with Oops in Traverse City. I know that a lot of the viewers of the podcast are fans of Oops, the Office of Possibilities out of the Grove in Traverse City. And I know that you mentor and coach some of those folks from time to time and they have nothing but fantastic things to say. So this is a treat for me and for you guys. So as we do at the beginning of every podcast, we like to get to know the person as an individual before we jump into the innovation or we jump into the career stories. So Jamie, would you take us through what makes you tick?
Yeah, that's a great way to start out. So let's do it in the easy way, the chronological way. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Anybody who knows anything about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, there's a vibe, there's a DNA, there's a personality of Western Pennsylvania that is very much me. I grew up one of four kids, Irish Catholic family, very involved in sports in Western Pennsylvania. So I went through there, went to a very large high school in Pittsburgh, and then went on to the University of Notre Dame, which was a dream of mine to go to Notre Dame. Spent 4 years at Notre Dame, had the time of my life, graduated with a marketing degree, but interestingly, graduated with a marketing degree, but not a job.
Oh,
So in leaving there, I was a little bit disillusioned, thinking, my gosh, you go to Notre Dame for 4 years, you should have a job. So I left there, went back to Pittsburgh, and answered an ad in the paper. This is 1981, mind you. Answered an ad in the paper to become a field sales person for a toy company. And that was never a dream of mine, but I needed a job. So that was the beginning of my career in 1981 with Lego.
whoa.
So we'll get into that, I'm sure, at some point a little bit during today's conversation. But from 1981 for the next 16 years, then I worked for Lego in a variety of different capacities, lived in different parts of the country. In 1990, the year that I got married to my wife, Mindy, we moved to Toronto with Lego for a new assignment at Lego. And in the ensuing 6 years, then we had all three of our children were born in Toronto. Jamie, Brendan, and Ryan, who are now grown and flown by now, were all born in Canada, which means they're Canadian citizens and dual citizenship. And at that point, we moved back to the US in 1997. I worked for a company called Playmobil. And then in 2003, and for the next 20 years, I lived with my family in Cleveland, Ohio, and worked for Faber-Castell. So that then moves me to 2023, at which point I semi-retired and started the company that I have today called For the Win. And when I look back at all of this, that quick synopsis of my career, the one thing that I think always stands with me is this idea of being born in Western Pennsylvania and the energy, the passion, the enthusiasm that is part of the DNA of Western Pennsylvania. That has followed me wherever I went, wherever I lived, wherever I go, wherever I meet. It really has become very much a part of me and a part of me that I really enjoy.
Wow, that what a great history and what a great I have so many ideas and things floating in my head. First off, Dale or Andrew Carnegie
Yes.
and Pittsburgh. I'm a big fan of Andrew Carnegie and his emigration from Scotland and what a big impact he had to Pittsburgh. And I'm sure that you know a lot more about him than I do, but what a great guy.
Yeah, and the wonderful legacy of Carnegie Mellon University.
Absolutely. Yes. And we have one of the Carnegie libraries here in Cadillac, because they built 1,000 libraries across the United States. And we have one here, which is now our museum
Yeah.
in Cadillac. Wow. And then the other thing that I really am curious about, and I love Pennsylvania too. It's such a diverse state. You've got the east side with all of the, the history and, Philadelphia and all that, and the steel and the in between. It's such a wilderness.
Yeah.
It's an amazing state. It's huge. But how did you end up in Traverse City?
So when my wife Mindy and I were looking to see where we might like to retire, we had our hearts set on an area north of Albany, New York, and maybe some people are familiar with it, called Lake George. So Lake George is about an hour or so, maybe not quite that far, north of Albany, New York. And it is an absolutely beautiful area. We had vacationed there many times, and we had our hearts set on retiring there. When we went to do that and start to look for a place around 2019, what we realized very quickly were two things. One is because of its proximity to Boston and to New York, the real estate prices were exceedingly high and the inventory was exceedingly low. And those things, as you know, probably go hand in hand quite often. So we left there very disenchanted, saying this is never going to happen,
Mm,
and lived attributes of Lake George. And we Googled them to see what else would come up that would be,
wow.
was the Torch Lake Inner City area. So we came up to visit.
Hmm.
I think that was Labor Day of 2019. And obviously fell in love with it after one long weekend, took a few more visits, and ended moving up here in 2020, commuted back and forth for a few years to Cleveland, and now have permanent residence here.
Fantastic. Wow, that is such a sort of a um, kind of a science project. You're looking at the ecological and the cultural, and I think that is so good. It's a lot better than what my dad did when he wanted to find a place in Texas. He just really literally bought. He wanted to go on a for his retirement. He wanted to, be a wanderlust. He bought this like 35-foot motorhome and was going to go and be in one of those RV senior citizens camps. And he basically opened up the RV, this
Yeah.
fat RV book, and pointed and went there.
Yeah. Well, if we didn't have Google, we might have done the same thing. That could have been us.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, what a great story. Well, let's get into this really intriguing company name. I love the name, don't you? It's For the Win Partners. And so hopefully by the end of the day, I'll be considered a partner.
Right.
I hope so. So tell us the origin story of For the Win Partners.
So the timing was such that it was what I felt to be perfect timing for me to move into, as we commonly call the next chapter, or semi-retirement. And the two things that really drove that were, I I had been at Faber-Castell as the CEO there for the US for 20 years. And I never ever thought that I would leave the company unless it was in a really, really good place. And that's where we were fortunate enough to find ourselves as we came out of the pandemic. We were in a really, really good place. So that, and my ability to say, you know what, I feel like I have the energy. I am able to do something different now with that last chapter. So both my considerations and the company considerations, I decided that it was time to signal up my retirement and do something different. I knew I didn't want to do nothing, but I wasn't sure exactly what it was I wanted to do, but I wanted to do something different. And that really fit the bill to be doing less of something, but go deeper into something. So as I started to think more and more about that, I realized through thinking through it that there were four things that were really important to me to share with other people. And those things were the importance in a business environment, in a team's environment, in a personal environment, the four things that were really important were purpose, culture, clarity, and creativity. So those four things. And that's where For the Win comes from.
Okay.
It's these four
Right.
things
I want to
that
get
many
those
people,
down. So it's
it's purpose,
purpose.
culture, creativity, and clarity. And oftentimes when I'm speaking to people about this, they'll say, oh, so those are the four pillars of For the Win partners. And yes, in a way, those are pillars. But I think what's really important is that those four things are actually what I like to view as accelerants. They are accelerants to fulfillment. Those are accelerants to flourishing, whether you be a company, whether you be an individual. It's those four accelerants into your strategy. Those will drive your business. Those will drive your success. Those will drive your fulfillment at a much, much faster and greater rate than if they were absent or if they were just put on a shelf and not intentionally integrated. So that's really the origin of For the Win.
Awesome. I love it. Purpose, culture, creativity, and clarity, and integrating those as accelerants really thrust. Did you use those in your previous job at your previous company?
I did, but what's interesting about that, Rose, is I did it not being real cognizant of those being the four. And it's like a lot of things, I don't know if anybody else has found this, but it's like a lot of things in this semi-retirement mode. You reflect upon things that become oh so clear now that were never clear before. And that's where this even came from, was just the reflection upon, okay, what was the journey? What did we do? What worked? What didn't work? What was enjoyable? What was not enjoyable? And upon reflection of those things, that's where purpose, culture, creativity, and clarity emerged as being four accelerants that absolutely did drive my career and drive some of our success as a company.
Well, I can see that they're super important values, and I think that focusing on, those core values are really going to help the partners quite a bit because you touch on the why, in my opinion, the purpose is the why, the culture is the team and the team environment. Of course, we all want to create, and if we don't have a clear focus of where we're going, you don't know where you're gonna end up.
Absolutely.
Super. So, Jamie, after 40 years, and you worked with giants like Lego and Faber-Castell, and I just learned that Faber-Castell is a 250-year-old company,
Probably closer to 260 now. Yeah.
260-year-old company, and was one of the original pencil makers from Germany and went worldwide, and just such a great legacy and history for you. But I know you started For the Win. I know it's your next chapter, but what is the purpose? Why did you do it? Were you trying to fill a gap? Why did you want to do this?
One of the things for me personally was to challenge myself that if I did fewer things, I could truly do them better. And let me explain that for a minute, because I think what happens in the world that we operate in today, and largely in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives, we are so busy and we are so heavily concentrated and scheduled, swamped. You pick the description, but we have so much going on that oftentimes we will find ourselves saying, if I only had a little more time, I could do a better job of that. If only I didn't have so much on my plate, I could probably do that better. So for me, in this last chapter, if you will, to challenge myself and say, no, you no longer have that excuse anymore.
Mm,
You do have the time. You can create the time. You can make the decision to have the time, and to challenge myself to do fewer things
mm.
and to be more successful, more meaningful, more fulfilled at those things. That was really part of this moving out and bringing more air and more time and more space into my schedule and also into the work that I choose to do now.
Awesome. Now, I know you work a lot with entrepreneurs and younger, people that are doing startups, and how does that feel compared to running a big corporation like Faber-Castell? Is there some similarities or differences?
There's huge differences. I mean, right off the bat, the differences in terms of resources, specialization versus generalization, hierarchy, structure, discipline, planning, routines. There are so many classic differences between the entrepreneur and also the corporation. But what it starts with for me, and it's a great reminder, is, it starts with empathy. It really begins with, with my background not being similar to the background of many of the people that I engage with and help, but it really starts out with a level of empathy and to try and understand that situation. A lot of design thinking starts with, the human situation, and that's really what's true here is, it's trying to understand what they're going through and also understand that the resources that we have within corporations are absolutely not at the same level, or those of entrepreneurs are not the same level. So that's a big part of this is understanding and being empathetic to what they have in front of them, but then also understanding that, there are some of those things that corporations have that entrepreneurs can absolutely benefit from as well. And maybe in a way that's process, maybe that's a bit of discipline, maybe that's a bit of budgeting and planning and some of those things that can absolutely help them as well.
Well, one thing that comes to my mind that I think one of your third core value being creativity. To me, creativity and resourcefulness kind of go hand in hand. And I know that you focus a lot on creativity. Your previous um, company, Faber-Castell, they were involved in creativity, art, pencils, the things that people use to create. And so when you're creating a brand new company with an entrepreneur, I think that that whole creativity um, is really going to be a strength, major strength that you bring to the entrepreneurial world, because, like I said, the most important thing is, in my opinion, is resourcefulness,
Right.
and you have to get creative when
Yeah.
you're thinking about becoming, trying to do more with less and all of that. And you've assisted. Now, we had a little story about Lego. There was an exchange student that came to Cadillac High School who was from the dynasty of the Legos, and she came, I think he came and took a Cadillac high school grad, married her, and now she's like in the
Oh
family.
yeah.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the family over there. And what was it?
It's in Germany. It's in Nuremberg, but
Nuremberg.
it is in its own right. It is essentially German royalty.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she came from our little town, and now she never comes back. So what they say, I didn't really know. I know that's about as all I know about that story. But so you've assisted European brands in entering the North American market. What common challenges do they face? And how does For the Win navigate them? Can you draw any alliances or how does that kind of mesh with your vision?
Yeah.
Bringing companies over here and incorporating those cultures.
So
That had to be hard.
it has its challenges, and if I look back to when I joined Lego, it was 1981. So Lego in 1981 was nowhere near the brand that it is today.
Mm.
We did business in many different countries. Lego, for those of you who don't know, is a family-owned Danish company.
That's why when you said Germany, I was confused because I thought it was Danish,
Yeah,
but
Lego is Danish and Faber-Castell is German.
okay.
Ironically, 40 years of my career was spent with European brands owned by families, privately held, who were very, very successful in their home market. So that brings us to this whole notion of European brands that are successful and had been successful for a number of years, then making the move to enter the North American market. And this is true of a lot of business situations. You know, the challenges were both internal and external. We always think of the external challenges of entering a market, but oftentimes what makes or breaks them is the internal mindset as you enter a market. So for instance, to say that we've been successful in Denmark and now we're going to move to a market that has 340 million people like the US, and we're just going to show up one day and it's going to embrace us, and now all of a sudden we're going to generate business there. That just is not the case. And I think that was a really good experience for all of us at Lego, was to understand that, you know, the US market is different. And the beauty of it was that the Danish management was very open. And I think to this day, one of their real strengths is the open-mindedness and the growth mindset of the Lego management team, to allow it to enter markets, to honor that market, to understand that market, to flex a bit and do different things in those markets, and therefore become successful. And it was a similar situation with Faber-Castell. Faber-Castell had been incredibly successful in Germany and in other markets, but coming into the US was different. And as we used to say, as great as you were in your home market, you can't just show up one day and say, why wouldn't I be great in a country, in a market with 340 million people? It takes a lot more work, a lot more open-mindedness. You've got to understand where you're willing to flex. And both of those companies have done that in such a way that it's allowed them to be successful, not just in their home market, but also in markets like the US.
Fantastic. I know that there are probably some bumps in the road. Did you have any challenges while doing that?
There were always challenges. We would find from time to time that what we felt that the product specifically, and interesting enough, if you think of the businesses we were in, especially Lego, packaging was a very, very important communication tool for us. You know, we didn't have huge advertising budgets. We were in brick and mortar retail environments in the 80s and in the 90s, and therefore the packaging was a key communication tool for us at Lego in the US. And the interesting part was, in Denmark and in Europe, where Lego was so well known, the only thing they had to do from a packaging standpoint was show the product and put a big Lego logo on the package. Immediately, everybody knew what that was. Well, that same type of packaging in the US market, because people didn't know the brand, didn't recognize the brand, it really meant nothing to them. It looked like a relatively small box that was very, very expensive, and they weren't able to really identify what the real USP or the value proposition was. So what we're able to do over time was modify that packaging, bring more messaging, bring more dynamism, bring more creativity to the packaging, and even to the point, if you can even imagine this today with Lego, when we were in the US, we were the first market globally to even put Lego in storage containers. There were never storage containers sold by Lego anywhere around the world until we began to do it in the US, because we knew that the classic story that all parents tell is walking on a Lego brick
I know.
and that pinch, that feel
Ouch.
that they have.
It's almost
So
like a pop top,
yes, exactly. So it was a big story, a big thing for us. That was a big
right?
change. So we met challenges, but because we had that trust level, because we had a growth mindset within the parent company, we were able to overcome and we were able to succeed over an elongated period of time.
Wow, what a good story. What a great story. You talk about packaging and marketing and communicating. Because I remember when I first saw Lego, I thought of legs pantyhose. You know, because I'm a woman, and Legg, Lego, and it was and but then I started having children, and it became a big Christmas present item.
And the other one that we ran into all the time when we had very little awareness and we told people who we worked for, I can literally remember telling people early on that I worked for Lego. And more often than not, the first thing they would say is, "Oh, Lego my Eggo,"
Oh gosh.
because that was a big
Yeah,
campaign
that
for
was a
Eggo
huge,
waffles
it
at the
was,
time.
it's still, yeah, yes, I can imagine. Wow. That is so cool. And you think of the Europeans, and I worked in England for 10 years and deployed my software in the NHS. And I ran into a lot of issues with going the other way, coming in from the United States, going into the UK. And I'm super empathetic, but I'm also very American. I heard that more times than not. You are so
Yeah.
American. And I was like, I can do a lot. I can change the code. I can make the user interface say NHS number instead of a medical record number. We can call these episodes not encounters because the word encounter means something not nice in England, even though we call an encounter what you do with a
Mhm.
doctor. It's not what you do with it in England, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. So we changed all of that, but I couldn't change who I am. But I think through really the beauty of the product, we were able to have a lot of success there. I see that you are a keynote speaker, and I'm not surprised because just sitting next to you and listening to your voice project on this podcast, I'm really happy because you have such a fantastic voice. I know everyone will be able to hear you loud and clear. Tell us about how you tailor your messages when you go out on the speaking circuit.
Well, I'm not by any means, nor do I, claim to be a professional speaker. I enjoy it, which is probably what you're hearing is just the fact that I really enjoy this and I really enjoy doing that. But I think the beginnings of that to be successful, and I don't think it's that much different, honestly. For years and years and years in my career, we had to make sales pitches and presentations to key customers. So that I think is really the foundation of any type of communication. And when we did that, when we were selling, because let's face it, that's what we were doing. We were out selling. When we were selling, we needed to understand the customer and we
Mhm.
needed to understand what the pain points were of the customer and the need of the customer. And I think there's a lot of parallels between that and doing public speaking,
Mhm.
knowing that audience. So if I'm at Georgetown, at the business school at Georgetown, talking to graduate business students, that's a different audience than it is to be in front of a group at the Smart Manufacturing Conference. Two very different groups that have different needs and different mindsets, and they're looking for different things. So the ability to understand and empathize is really the foundation of that. I think when we are talking to university students these days, as I do, and I talk to them about creativity, there is still to this day, believe it or not, there's a real need to make sure that they understand what creativity is. And inevitably, not just students, but many people continue to see creativity as being synonymous with being artistic.
Mm.
And that is really a shortchanging of something that is so critically important today as creativity is. If we continue to believe, students continue, business professionals continue to believe that in order to be artistic, then that is in a short circus something that is so important and is our ability to be creative. So
Mhm.
empathy in keynoting, understanding the audience, knowing what their needs are, where they're coming from, really is the key, and it's where it all begins.
I hear you. Creativity can be pigeonholed into art class,
Yeah.
and that comes from school and people being encouraged if they have a creative spark or if they're artistic, they call it that. And I know it's a little passé to say vision, but I remember my partner at IBM, he was super creative, a genius, really. And we would call it George Vision because he had so much really was creative. But we didn't use that word because we didn't want him to be
Yeah.
pigeonholed like that. So I think the word vision and to be able to see something like that. And you're super humble, Jamie. I mean, if I was speaking at Georgetown, I definitely say I was on the speaking circuit. Good for you. That's a feather in your cap. I think that is so good, and for you to really reach out to those students and communicate to them and being able to sort of cross the divide. And so let's go back to your tenure and your leadership lessons that you carry over into For the Win. You know, you were at big companies, you're with For the Win. How has all of that shaped your new approach in consulting? How do you approach consulting?
So the one thing that I think is, and this is a bit of it was a revelation for me as I entered kind of, again, we call this, the new chapter of life, was for me to kind of get back in touch with, what am I trying to do anyway? What is it that I want to do? And I was mentioning to you earlier when we were sitting around before we started, the realization for me was, hey, what I'm here to do right now is I'm here to help people by sharing what I know while still continuing to have fun and learn myself. So the helping part of it is, to help people be successful, to help them not just be successful, but to be fulfilled and to flourish. That's the helping piece. And what I bring to the party, if you will, is it's what I've experienced, it's what I've learned. To a certain extent, is what I believe. That's the helping piece. And then, I myself, as with all of us, there's so much more for us to learn. There's so much more for us to do, and there's also so much more for us to enjoy.
Mm,
So it's the helping while sharing while living piece of it, just kind of the underpinning of all of this for me. I mean, when I look back across my career, and as I mentioned before, this is a reflection time of
mm,
life, which is
mm,
super healthy.
mhm.
Something I wish I had done, much, much more during my working years. But when I reflect upon it now, I think what really becomes interesting is for a lot of years, I was a boss. I was somebody's boss. And it wasn't until later in my career that I took that journey, which I think a lot of people do, from boss to leader.
Mm,
So, and those two things, I mean, it seems even ridiculous to say it now, but those two things are so different.
mhm,
You can be someone's boss
mhm,
and not be a leader,
mhm,
but leadership is so much different.
mhm.
And that's the type of thing that I try and bring to the work that I'm doing now, especially work that I do with leaders. So, the boss attributes, which many of you can immediately recognize, the boss attributes have a lot to do with ego. They
Mm,
have a lot to do with command and control.
mm,
They have a lot to do with being the smartest person in the room. It has a lot to do with not making any mistakes, never showing weakness or vulnerability. All those things that embody this image of somebody's boss, but truly realizing that to be an effective leader, there's so many of those things that cannot be present. The ego's got to go. The smartest person in the room's got to go. Vulnerability's got to come to the forefront
right.
if we're really going to establish trust. So a lot of those attributes of the boss mentality, I had to unlearn those, let go of those, and move into a much more effective, successful mode of being a leader. And that's what I keep trying to bring forward with the work that I do now. Because, hey, I got it wrong before I ever got it right.
Wow. Well, that certainly is showing some vulnerability right there, showing us that you're human.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And so you approach you what if you run across somebody who is the boss and they are just disconnecting? How do you have those have conversations?
Yeah. Because well, I think, people say, what's the difference? Boss, leader, doesn't matter. I think you have to, first of all, you have to understand and truly believe in the importance of people
Mm,
in an organization. I mean, quite frankly, if you don't believe in the importance of people and the contribution that people make through their performance and their development, if you don't believe in that, then it doesn't matter whether you're a boss or a leader. Quite frankly, it's irrelevant if that's your approach. But if you truly believe in people, then you understand that you need them, you need to encourage them, you need to develop them. You really need to develop and manage their performance and their development in order to be successful. So any leader that I speak to, and believe me, this is more common than you would ever want to think. I've sat down with clients before and immediately they dive into, hey, you need to help me as a consultant. You need to help me get into Walmart. You need to help me get shelf space at Target. You need to help me increase my Amazon business. They immediately go to one of the parts of their strategy, and that's where they want to focus. Well, after you spend a little bit of time, you may realize that, in the end, your problem isn't distribution. Your problem is a lack of leadership. The problem is this
Like I
organization
said,
doesn't know where it's going.
that is not an easy conversation.
It is not, and that's
And
where
so tell me, how do you approach that?
it's creating the tie between results
Okay.
and individual performance of people
Okay.
and managers.
I'm going to role play for a minute.
Yep.
I'm going to say, hey, Jamie, I really need to get into the Amazon world. They're eating my lunch. My people just don't seem to get it. We need to get into Amazon. I tell them that, and then a month or 3 months later, I finally have one of my SKUs out there. What am I going to do?
Yeah. So that would be a situation where I would say, when is the last time that you sat at a table in a work session with your Amazon sales team?
Well, you just have no idea how busy I am.
Yeah. And that's why when you look at your sales team and your ability to critique your sales team, you need to sit and spend time with them.
Okay.
What
I
is,
do. I have
what-
a 30-minute dashboard with them every Monday
yes. And what are they telling you in that dashboard?
that they're not making their numbers.
Yeah. Well, they're probably not telling you they're not making their numbers. They're probably just not making their numbers.
Well, that's what I knew.
Right. And that's where the priorities in sitting with them and saying, what is most important? What is holding us back? What is holding us back from getting into Amazon? Let me give you a really good example. So back in probably the early 2000s at Faber-Castell, we were trying to generate distribution through Walmart, and we were not able to crack the Walmart stores. So we, myself included, I was as frustrated as you just described. That's how frustrated it was. I sat with that team and I took the investment, I took the time, and we problem solved and we opened our minds, we had a growth mindset. And what we ended up with was what I felt to be one of the most creative solutions. And it really changed the trajectory of the company. What we did was say, the only way that we will get into Walmart is by proving to them that we can generate what we would call a rate of sale or a velocity of sale. In order to do that, one of our people said, why don't we begin a direct consumer business through Walmart.com? At the time it was called Jet.com, but Walmart.com.
I remember that.
And let's fulfill it ourselves. We will create a rate of sale by doing an e-commerce play, and we will then leverage that e-commerce play into retail shelf space. And that's exactly what happened. But what we had to do, what I had to do as a leader, I had to agree to take a portion of our fulfillment operation and turn it into a direct consumer pack and play type of operation. And by doing that, and by listening to that group, I was not going to hear that, Rose, if I stayed in my office and just continually criticized them and looked at reports and asked why this wasn't happening. Once I sit and look at creative solutions and support that and allow that risk to happen, that's where
great role play and a great story. That really explained to me, that you had to roll up your sleeves.
Yeah.
You had to just get in there and roll up your sleeves. And what a crazy idea, though, too. I mean, not only did you roll up your sleeves, but working with Jet, and who knew what Jet was, and would that even be successful? Who even uses that? And, there's so much risk, like you said, but you not only rolled up your sleeves, you took the risk that your team brought to you.
yes.
That wasn't a sure thing, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Wonderful. Okay, so let's keep moving. So I just think this has been a fantastic so far. I'm really learning a lot about Jamie's style and his approach. And Jamie, let's talk a little bit. You know, the world is changing. Everybody says everything's going digital. You know, AI is coming at us from every way, left, right, and center. And so, what I was wondering, how do you deal with your consulting customers when there's so much disruption happening? It's a different problem. It's not like, you know, you're trying to communicate with your staff. You've got the outside coming in trying to, you know, influence, and it's coming at us hot and heavy.
Yeah.
What do we do about that?
Yeah. Well, that's where I think one of the reasons I created the purpose, the culture, the clarity, and the creativity is really because of the uncertainty. I mean, you know, the world that you're describing, I often describe as the VUCA world. It's the vulnerability, it's the volatility, it's the uncertainty, it's the complexity, and it's the ambiguity.
Ooh,
And
I got to write that down.
so it's VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, 8 years ago, when I first heard this term, I thought, well, that'll be around for a little while and it'll go away. But I mean, how ridiculous is that, right? There is probably no time in our lives where VUCA has been more applicable than it is right now. This is the world that we are living in. We're doing business in this world. We're expected to succeed in this world. We're expected to innovate in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to change anytime soon. This is what is happening. This is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complicated, and it's ambiguous. And this is where we are. Within that context, though, I think it's really even more important that we identify those things that we do believe in. So we do believe in our purpose. You know, somebody had once said to me, you've got to, especially as a leader, step back from time to time and say, what are we trying to do anyway?
Mm-hmm.
What the heck are we trying to do? Why are we here? It's a little bit of the Simon Sinek, start with why. But it's such an important question for alignment, especially in these volatile times. You know, the cultural piece of it within, you know, For the Win. Culture is nothing more than behaviors. So what are those behaviors that we are exhibiting in response to uncertainty, in response to the volatility that's out there? And then you've got creativity, which there's been no other time that we weren't being asked in the way we are now to create new things and fix things that are broken. And then clarity, my gosh, what a completely distracted world that we live in now. We need to be clear. So as we start to confront the VUCA world, there are those things that we have to find and hold true so that we are able to move ahead and deal with some of those things that are uncertain. What do we believe in? What are we trying to do? You know, what is our behavior? What is our culture? Let's hold dear to those, even as we start to try and navigate through some of the uncertainty and some of the volatility that's out there right now.
Right. And so I want to bring us down a little bit, a little bit to a tactical approach to VUCA. Let's just take AI, for example. This is the innovation podcast. Everyone's like focusing on that disruptive technology, and let's do a VUCA on that. So how would you approach a innovation like that happening in, you know, one of your previous roles, or even as an entrepreneur? How would you approach VUCA in AI?
You know, I think, first of all, my perspective or my feeling about AI is it almost begins with a philosophical approach to it. And mine is such that, you know, obviously it's not all good and it's not all bad. As best as I can tell, AI is a tool that we have that we can use to supplement and complement our humanity. So we're not going to completely hand over everything to AI. If we have a business problem, we're not going to put it in ChatGPT and have it spit out an answer. If we're ideating in a world like we have now, why not help your ideation by using AI as the starting point. View of it is take a look at different parts of the organization and complement and supplement using a tool
Mhm.
like AI,
Right.
but then retain the human part of it,
Mhm.
retain the empathy,
Mhm.
retain the people part of it, and add to that. So if I'm looking at a situation where we're looking to develop new product, let's say we have a new idea for product, I would easily go to AI and look for some type of a critique on the market and the consumer potential that AI sees and run that through all the different information that's out there. Take a look at that and say, hey, there's what AI is saying. What do we know about the
Mhm.
consumer? How can we put these two things together? And then let's move ahead. So I think it's using it to our advantage,
Mhm.
but not handing off
Right.
everything, especially the human part of it. Do not hand off the humanity parts to AI. Use it in a different way.
Right. One thing that I think you're absolutely right. Ideation, keep the people in. Human beings, though, love the expediency factor. They love to do whatever's faster, cheaper, better, quicker. And as a leader, we need to really push that message through an organization that the expediency factor, which means faster, better, cheaper, quicker, whatever, we need to kind of bring it back so that we don't just say, well, this is going to be the quick and dirty.
Yes, and Rose, I mean, that's such a good point. And I think that's when you look at that, that's where the culture piece of For the Win comes in. At the end, is your culture. What are the behaviors and the values that you cherish and you believe in and you exhibit as a company? If it's faster, better, cheaper, I'm sorry, that's your culture.
Hmm.
That is part of your culture. And if
Hmm.
that's what you're exhibiting, if you're saying we're all about quality and thoughtfulness and strategy, but what you're exhibiting is faster, better, cheaper, if the decisions that you're making as a leader
Hmm.
consistently show faster, better, cheaper, but your mission statement says that we're about quality and
And
thoughtfulness
long-term
and long-term
legacies.
thinking and financial tolerance, well, you've got a disconnect there.
Right. But the thing is, it's human nature, that
Yeah,
expediency. So it is a balance. And I do believe that those values will keep us centered.
yeah.
The win values that you have.
And the importance of that really is, and coming back to this idea as a leader, you need to look at what you're exhibiting.
Mm.
What are the behaviors that you are exhibiting? Because people are watching and they will take their lead from you.
Yes, absolutely. I hear you there. So we have had a great time. I'm looking ahead now. What emerging trends do you see in your world, whether it's in the university world? I think that that's a world that we all miss. It's been
Yes.
several years since most of us have been there. But you seem to have a chance to go back to campus now and then. What emerging trends do you believe that businesses should embrace to really stay competitive and innovative uh, in in the days ahead?
So I'm predisposed to a belief that sees a lot of things like a pendulum.
Mm.
And the pendulum in my eyes cannot swing too far in one direction or the other. Some people may call it a both and environment. So whether that's
Mm.
technology, whatever it might be, there is an equilibrium or there's a pendulum that can only swing so far before it needs to come back. And I think that's true when we look at some of the trends today. So for example, I believe, and based upon the time that I've spent at universities and with students and in businesses, I think this idea of humanity and the human factor is one that will become a trend because I think the way that technology has developed, it's a little out of proportion.
I agree.
So I
I
will,
think that just makes me smile.
and I will give you a term that we've begun using. There's a group of us, and this is somewhat of a
Okay,
plug.
got my pencil ready.
Yes. So we look at durable skills And durable skills is kind of a play on what people used to call those are the soft skills. But now in today's world, if you look at the way things are trending, what is now and will become even more important going forward are those durable skills that will withstand and endure the test of any technology, any VUCA world. And those are things like communication, collaboration, creativity, transformational curiosity, emotional intelligence. I know Barb was with you the other day on your podcast, and Barbara Jordan spoke very eloquently
She
about the
did. Wasn't she
importance
amazing?
of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, resonance. These are the things that we look at now as being the durable skills that are going to be so needed. This is the foundation going forward. So no matter what the VUCA world throws at us, no matter what the technological development is, we stand with those durable skills that will help us navigate no matter what that is out there. And I think that's a trend. You're going to see more and more, both in education and in business, you're going to see a greater focus on these durable skills. Now, let me throw this at you as we wrap up here. The challenge with that is it's integrating and ingraining and developing those durable skills in a largely virtual environment. So at best, we've got hybrid work environments, and that's a very challenging thing to ingrain and establish in a virtual environment. How are we onboarding people? How are we building culture? How are we getting people together with human connection in a virtual environment? We've got to make the most of the time that we have together.
I agree with you so much, but I think that remote workspace is so important. So we have these virtual workers all over the world, really, you know, the 4-hour work week and guys working on their laptops wherever they may be. But, you know, I learned this at IBM that when you pull together about 100 people, more than 100, it's too much. But if, like at the Grove, they have 30 people we meet with OOPS, or 40 people or 50 people, and we don't, our W-2s come from all different places, but we get together and spend quality time together. And it scratches that itch for me, even though I work remotely, I'm alone a lot, but knowing that I can go to those events and be with those people that I really feel like they are my tribe. So I think it's important in this virtual world, and as a suggestion in this environment, maybe enmeshing these remote workspaces or these OOPS types meetups. Maybe we can, blend these durable skills with the new world.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is where this is going. I do think that, the experience that you've had and many others have had through OOPS is a great example of both and.
Yeah, I agree. Well, as a gift, I want to give Jamie my book that I just published on Amazon. It's Charged Like a Bull. And as my guest, this is the 7 strategies for relentless business growth. And it's more of a business development. How do I scale my company from, let's say you're plateauing at 500,000, a million, or even 5 million, and you really want to kind of put some strategies in place that will help you grow to 100 million. That's what that is. And
Thank
then
you so much.
you
That's
bet.
wonderful.
And then I have the workbook to go with it. And so I'm going to give both of these to you today. And I just appreciate you so much for being on the podcast.
And I give you wonderful, wonderful credit and congratulations for this. This is a tremendous amount of work.
It was hard.
This is a great amount of work. To go the extra mile and do this is fantastic.
Thank
So
you.
congratulations.
Well,
That's
I'd like
very
to
well done. I appreciate it.
Love your feedback. I value your opinion. And this has been such a delight for me today to get to spend time with Jamie. His reputation preceded him, and I have been overjoyed and totally excited to have him. And I need to have you back in about a year,
Yes,
if you
happy
would,
to do.
please, because we want to hear how things have grown and changed and some more fantastic stories about For the Win partners. And last words?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. It's been a great experience. It's wonderful that you're taking time to do this and to share and create benefit. And I'm very happy to be a part of it. So thank you so much.
Welcome. You're very, very welcome. And with that, we are going to close out this podcast and say goodbye. Awesome.
Thank you.